This is the concierge, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in this week's episode, we're going to be doing a little bit of a weekend in review. A lot of different things were done over the weekend. I know that I was off last week. My parents came into town. We were able to go to a couple different restaurants. We actually ended up going to like a nightlife kind of thing. Well, really, very much so. It's like a convention. So we did that. And went to a steakhouse, Barry's, over at Circa, which is probably one of the more well-reviewed, well-covered properties or restaurants on Fremont Street. We went to a couple different places on the Strip. The convention itself was actually inside of the Westgate, which we'll talk about that as well. Of course, I made my bi-weekly trip to Delilah's just to make sure I knew who was, in town, which it was NBA Summer League, which typically Delilah's and like one other place are hotspots to see a lot of these basketball players, the win in general, and we'll get into that as well. So I'll go ahead and dive into the episode coming up next. Okay, everybody, so we're going to go ahead and dive into the episode. So my family actually ended up coming in on Thursday, which I actually had to stop the recording and sort of rewind and figure out what do we do on that day. So after kind of like a hectic sort of Thursday, flights were delayed and that kind of thing, I was able to get my parents to go to, my dad really wanted to have a cocktail at Fountain Blue at the at Collins Bar, which he did. He actually ended up having their Hotel Nacional, which is one of their signature cocktails there, and I think he liked it. He had one, thought it was cool, and then we ended up going to Mother Wolf. We had dinner at Mother Wolf because he was really in the mood for pasta, didn't want to do steak, so we ended up doing a pasta on that day. So really important, I think I've said this a couple times, we took him to Mother Wolf. My dad doesn't really know how to do these type of restaurants, which honestly, not a lot of people do. When the first time I went to Mother Wolf in Los Angeles, I was 1,000% confused. I could not read the menu because everything is in Italian. It was very, very difficult. I got like a pizza and like some other dish that I didn't end up liking. But once you go enough times and you go with somebody who knows, this is a good chance to sort of reiterate. If somebody has been there before and they have an idea, maybe just go with it. So we had a fantastic meal. So we ended up having so we got there, got a table, which is quite nice. Also, they didn't know what they wanted to eat, so I had to make a reservation. My parents, I have to say, when they're in town, are notoriously terrible at making reservations for restaurants because sometimes they don't know what they want to do. Sometimes they don't know where they're going to be. And for me, that is absolute death, just because I know if you want to go to the nicer restaurants in town, you have to make a reservation. And sometimes you can get away with it. They eat early because, they're old. So sometimes the early reservations are a little bit easier to make. So something around like 6 o'clock, 6:15, usually a little bit easier to book than later in the day. So we ended up going to Mother Wolf, and then we got a reservation, walked in, got a nice little seat, sort of like on a corner sort of booth deal, which is quite nice, and sort of like a round table. Just because the seats can be kind of difficult there, depending on how you're sitting. Like one time I was two people, it was me and another person, and we were sat in between like two other parties, which was absolutely terrible. Just such a horrible experience, especially for an Italian restaurant because you are sharing. So we get there, I kind of give him the lowdown on like, these are the things we should try. These are the things I think you would like. So also, he tried something I didn't think he was going to like, and for me, it's always exciting when my parents or my dad specifically tries something and then really likes it, especially something that maybe I didn't like a lot a lot before. Like my dad loves bone marrow. Like that's something I never knew about my parents growing up until my dad started going to some of the more fancy restaurants. And he enjoys, some of the finer things, including bone marrow. We didn't have bone marrow this time, but we did end up having the squash blossom. Oh my goodness, it has a name, but it's a stuffed squash blossom essentially, which is lightly fried, and it has a ricotta cheese on the inside. And my dad loved it, and it was funny because I eat it with my hand. I just grab it by the stem, and I just eat it that way. But my dad actually used a fork and knife. Very, very classy gentleman with my mom. Yeah, he devoured it. He had like 2 or 3 of them. He loved them. So I was really excited that he tried those and he really enjoyed those, especially because they are a signature item at Mother Wolf. So he really liked those. And then I really had to sort of, this is the thing, is that my dad will always want, I use my dad a lot because my mom is pretty cool. Me and my mom are like eye to eye a lot of things. But my dad typically always wants a salad. And one of the most expensive, this is an insider tip for really anything in general. Insider tip, the most expensive thing on the menu that is not worth the price of admission most of the time is any salad on a menu. Like any just generic Caesar salad, garden green salad, like at one of these higher end restaurants, are trash. They're usually not worth it. I usually don't recommend it. Caesar salads typically are not very good in a lot of places. But then not that they're not good. It's just that like they're adequate. It's like they're good enough, and you can have a Caesar salad anywhere you want to go. But honestly, sometimes you just want one. But we did not get a salad. I said we do not need a salad. No salad. Because we got the squash blossoms instead, which is great. Focaccia bread, also delicious. The focaccia bread, by the way, comes complimentary if you order entrees, so keep that in mind. So, as we move on, actually, it did not come complimentary. We had to order it. So annoying. So, we actually ended up ordering a couple different entrees, a couple different pastas. I recommend when you go to Mother Wolf, they have meat on the menu, they have a chicken dish, they have fish. Do pasta. Like, just go for the pasta. It's much more worth it. It's not as expensive as the rest of the menu, which we're not always like worrying about how expensive things are, but really what they are known for is their pastas, and I think that their pastas are so much better than everything else that they have on their menu. So do their pastas, and their pizzas are delicious too. So we end up going, and I told them we should get, the cacio e pepe. That's what they're known for. Try to get things that they're known for, especially for if it's people's first time or they want to experience it. So we got the cacio e pepe, light on the pepper, and then it was sort of like a struggle because my dad wanted this like lemon pasta. And the thing is that my dad will just see a lemon pasta on the menu and say, oh, that's something I want. I can understand that is lemon, that is pasta, that's what I want. I've never had it before, to be honest, so I was like, I don't know, but they really wanted it. So they got that, cacio e pepe, and my mom really, really did not want us to get a third entree. She was really against it. But this is the thing, when you go with people who know what they're doing, sometimes you just gotta listen to them. The thing is, you also gotta know like the people you're taking. I definitely knew that my parents thought that this was gonna be like Carmine's or one of those other like Buca di Beppo, where the pastas are gigantic, like huge giant troughs of pasta, which is usually true for other places. Mother Wolf is not that. Mother Wolf, the items themselves, because there are 3 of us, are made for kind of groups, small groups like the ones we were, like your group of 4, group of 3, group of 2. Well, that's a couple. That's what they're made for. So they're actually made for much smaller groups for you to be able to taste essentially the all the different types of pastas. So I ordered a third one. So like I ordered the lemon one that they wanted. I also ordered the cacio e pepe, and then I also ordered their short rib pasta, which is absolutely delicious. It's the one red dish on the menu, but I knew that they were going to like it. I was very, very determined they were going to have to try this. And what do you know? Perfect number of pastas. Even the waiter was like, he's probably, the pastas are kind of small. And they came, perfect size, everybody liked them, and everybody's favorite dish was the cacio e pepe. They loved it. They really thought it was delicious, and it made me really happy. It really makes me happy when I see people when I order the correct thing that everybody ends up eating, and they all loved it. This meal, I think it ended up being like around $220, which is actually not bad because the average bill for a lot of people at a lot of these restaurants end up being about $110, $115 per person. So there's 3 of us. So if we can keep it under that like $300 price range, which again, $210 or $20, you actually end up getting like pretty much a good deal, especially if you leave, satisfied, which I think we ended up having a tiramisu, which my mom enjoyed. But I also did not have a cocktail. My mom also, I believe, did not have a cocktail. She got like an iced tea kind of thing. And that's really a good way to sort of cut down on your bill, is to like not have cocktails. My dad had a cocktail, or he had a beer. So I don't recommend, and not that I don't recommend cocktails. It's just like when you know you're going to be ordering a lot of food, I tend to like to order, sodas and stuff just because it keeps the price down. Because cocktails essentially are $18 to $22, and that's like a whole extra entree or appetizer. So it's sort of like you have to start playing sort of the budget game at that point. So that was on Thursday. Friday they ended up going to the concert that they were going to go to, which is like at the Hana Music concert, which was at the Westgate. Really quickly, the Westgate Hotel, I always thought, and if you don't know where the Westgate is on Paradise Avenue or Paradise Drive, Paradise Avenue, Paradise Street. We'll go with that one. And that is located next to the convention center, which essentially is a timeshare, but also is a hotel. It's the old International Hotel, and then after that it was the Hilton, where Elvis Presley performed. Lots of Elvis lore inside of the Westgate. Very clean. I have to say, I was very impressed with the Westgate. Everything was quite clean. Nothing was like super duper under construction. Somewhat friendly staff most of the time. Very old school Vegas-y, if you will. I think the beers were $8.50, $7.50, something like that. But nice little restaurants, little cafe. They have Benihana there, so it's cool. They have a steakhouse. It's called The Edge. I have never eaten there. Can't tell you what it's like. But Sportsbook is really what you're going for when you go to the Westgate. Really gigantic Sportsbook, Las Vegas Superbook. They have a lot of different promotions and things like that in terms of like contests and such. And a really good little snack bar. The snack bar, a little pricey, but the food's quite good. They have wings, they have burgers, they have chicken fingers, which are great late night, as long as before midnight. They should make that 24 hours. I think that would be a great idea. But let's get overall. The rooms, very nice, very spacious. They also have really nice bathrooms, which is really cool as well. Stand-up showers. They have the sort of like the rainfall faucets for the showers, which is cool. So overall, Westgate as a hotel, fantastic experience. Really great job. So I ended up dropping them off, and then I ended up going to Delilah's that night. And I knew that when I went to Delilah's, I was probably going to see a couple different basketball people, just because that's where they like to frequent. As I was walking in, there's usually a security guard and a hostess. There was a little bit of a line, and you always know it's a very busy night when they sort of start tightening up the ropes. But I essentially just walked right in, so I kind of cut a lot of people. This is a good little tip for you guys, that if you end up going someplace and you know you're going to go to the bar, if you're going to a table, obviously you have to check in with the hostess. But if you are just going to the bar or the lounge area, you obviously don't have a reservation. Do not wait in that line. Just cut through all the right to people. Just say, hey, I'm going to the bar. It's a really good way to do it. Just, hey, I'm going to the bar. They will usually just let you in 9 out of 10 times. You will not get stopped unless you look underage, but they will not stop you. You just, I'm going to the bar, and go right in. You can also use this one, I'm meeting some people. That's also another great one. No one's going to stop you at that point. And then you can cut right into the lounge and bar area, and you can skip somewhat of the line at a restaurant, not a nightclub. Nightclubs, gotta wait. Sorry, bud. Unless you're tipping. That's also important. Very, very important. So I crossed like all these people. So when I crossed all these people, I didn't really make note of who might have been in that line. They all look sort of like normal white dudes. So cross that line, and as I get into the bubble bar area at Delilah's, 2 people are getting out of the only 2 seats at the bar because it was very busy that day, so they took out all the seats. They only left 2. Sat down at the bar. As I sit down, who do I see pulling up? The head coach of the Heat. So the head coach of the Heat, Spoelstra, was there. So let me make sure. So Eric Spoelstra was inside of Delilah's, with all of his posse and that kind of thing. They were there for NBA Summer League, and pretty normal people. They just had like normal conversations, nothing too crazy. But they were just waiting for their table to come by. So that's what they were there for. Also, the owners of Delilah's was there, so that was really cool. I talked to the bartenders about that. They said they're very cool. They ended up, I think, were just like LA kids that would run parties and stuff in Los Angeles, and thought that they were, we could do a better job than a lot of these restaurants. And that's where they came up with the idea for Delilah's. So very interesting little bits there. Also, shout out to the bartenders out there, which were Alexis and Tommy. Tommy is the busser, and he's really, really cool. So shout out to those guys. But cocktails were fantastic. Night was good. We ended up seeing Doc Rivers. So Doc Rivers is the head coach of the Bucks. And then most of the Bucks were there as well. Not the big guys. Giannis was not there because he is not playing in the Summer League. But this all just essentially leads me to say that if you are in town and you know that there's something like that, like a lot of athletes, so say like Team USA is having a practice here, or if it's Summer League or anything of that nature, or the in-season tournament, Delilah's at the Wynn, or the Wynn in general, is a good place to find a lot of those celebrities, just because it is a very high-end hotel. So that's typically we're going to find a lot of those, that caliber of people in town. It was also the Backstreet Boys over the weekend, and I did not go. Very disappointed, but I did have a friend who actually ended up going. And I have to say, the Backstreet Boys, much more worth it than Kenny Chesney. I know a lot of people are just like, duh, but I thought Kenny Chesney was going to be a little bit better in terms of what I saw from the actual Sphere itself. But Backstreet Boys looks like it super duper delivered. I didn't check on tickets again, but I'm sure they might have gone up a little bit just because people will want to go see them. So yeah, that was on Friday. So moving on to Saturday. So Saturday, I ended up going to a birthday. Shout out Stormy. Lovely birthday party at her house. I thought it was super, super fun, and she ordered Chick-fil-A, so that's always nice. But I ended up going over to that evening with my parents to a Tejano music concert, which is at the Westgate as well. Really big, gigantic space. Really reminded me of going back home to Tucson, not just because of the music. Also really just really funny just watching my parents just like totally geek out and be like 19 years old. Really excited for all the acts that came up. No, I didn't understand any of the words, but essentially I have grown up around that music for so long that I know that music just by how it sounds. It's sort of like just when you know a song, you know a song. And I'm like, oh yeah, banger. That's a banger. That's the one that everybody likes. Everybody came for that. I know that. That's as much as I got. And I also knew I was, at home because I had an older gentleman say, why are you at a Tejano music conference, which is mostly in Spanish, and you don't speak Spanish. And I just got to do I'm here for them. That's all I'm here for. And you get kind of used to it, especially being like Latin, and especially Mexican. This is a big deal. Being Mexican and not speaking Spanish, you get yelled at a lot by older people. But, you learn to live with it. It's cool. But it was a fun time. And then, I went to sleep before my parents did. I was like, all right, guys, I'm going upstairs. I'm having my chicken fingers. I'm going to go sleep. And it was 12:30. They didn't get back to the room until 3 o'clock in the morning. I've never seen them go this hard before. I thought it was actually one of the funnier things that I had ever witnessed, that they were out there that late. Also, my mom and dad are huge fans of this gentleman called Jay Perez, which he is a big, Tejano music star, been around for a very, very long time, always at these things. He also, he's a big deal. Essentially, how can I put into words who this is? He's sort of like the Dean Martin or Frank Sinatra of Tejano music. Everybody knows who he is. He's sort of like a staple. Everybody kind of has it, really enjoys them. And that's kind of how it is. She actually met him at a slot machine that she was playing, and Jay Perez's wife was playing at the slot machine right next to it and asked a question about it. And then, my mom looked around and he was there, and she was like, and my mom doesn't like taking pictures like this. She doesn't go after celebrities. She don't care. But she's like, would you mind if we could take a photo? But I don't know how to take a selfie. And then he did the whole thing where he took a selfie with her. So it was really fun, just seeing my mom get excited about, a celebrity, a somewhat celebrity in, hanging out in the hanging out in the casino. But it was fun. And then my dad had a good time. He was, they were dancing, that whole thing. So really, really fun. Really, really good time doing that. And it's always nice to sort of get back with my parents and do fun topics like that. So the reason you guys have all waited this long is so you can hear my review about Barry's. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So usually on the last night of their trips or the first night of their trips, in this case we did last night and first night, that's cool. We ended up going to Barry's on, I believe, Monday. So my parents also think like you can just get reservations anywhere, which they were right in this case, but they thought they just could walk into Barry's. Here's the thing, guys. You can walk in sometimes to places, but they don't like it. And there was a lot of availability when I made this reservation because it was a Monday. And there's not a lot of sports going on, so that helps. And it was like the early time, so it was like 5 o'clock. So we ended up getting a reservation. It was like 4 o'clock and I made the reservation. For Barry's. And it was sort of like a celebration because, a celebratory thing happened. But anyways, so we go to Barry's. I have to say, guys, off the bat, Barry's is not like an every time you come to Las Vegas thing. It's definitely like a special occasion restaurant. Even for me, like who lives here, and I would go to the bar and maybe have a cocktail and maybe have like one item, that would be a lot for this restaurant. Just because, let me just read off the prices for you because it's pricey. The fire chicken, which essentially is chicken. It is a chicken breast and a chicken thigh and a drumstick. So it's like essentially like half a chicken. So it's pretty big. This thing is $58 for chicken. For the Chilean sea bass is $79. And then for the lamb chop is $89, which I'm assuming is massive. The burger, we always love to talk about how expensive burgers are. The burger itself is $49. So this is a very expensive restaurant. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a very pricey restaurant. But again, it is a good, like, celebratory restaurant to go to. And I do recommend that you share. I think sharing is underrated. Those of you who all order your own steak, that is awesome. But this is definitely a you can share a steak kind of deal. So we ended up going. My dad, like, just really wanted this chicken. He got the chicken. He was very excited. I went with, my mom was there. So we ended up sharing the 14-ounce dry-aged boneless ribeye. $82. Is it the cheapest steak on the menu? Yeah, it is. They have one cheaper. It's called the wet-aged filet mignon. It's only 8 ounces, so we're not going to share that, obviously. But I also don't like filet mignon. That's kind of like a thing on me. But that's what we had. So we had the 14-ounce dry-aged boneless ribeye steak. Fantastic. Delicious. Cut perfectly. They cut it for you before it gets to the table. Just let them know you're going to share. It's not a big deal. And you're good to go. So I had the steak. My mom and my dad ended up having the chicken, the fire roasted chicken, which he loved the sauce on it. He thought it was absolutely delicious and really succulent. And I have to say, one of the moistest chicken breasts I've ever seen. So really, really phenomenal job on the chicken. And my dad tore it up. Loved it. Really loved it. So before we got to that, we ended up having a Caesar salad. So I just got done on a rant about Caesar salad. But we're at a steakhouse. We really wanted a salad because it's sort of like it goes hand in hand. And this salad was bomb. It was also only $19. Like, I've been to a lot of places where the salad is like $23, $24. So really, it's actually not that bad. It was actually perfectly sized for, 3 people. You comes in, you can all serve each other. The croutons are very large. It is one of those places that does the anchovies on top. I got it without, just obvious reasons. And the salad, cool, crisp, delicious lettuce, phenomenal. A+ work on the Caesar salad at Barry's. Loved it. Also, their bread, which is complimentary, phenomenal bread. It was so good. Oh, the bread, the rolls. They also have these like beautiful like focaccia bread, which is really tasty as well. It was fantastic. So appetizers, A+, bread, A+. I ended up having an old fashioned. So they have a very large bourbon menu. So if you are somebody who really loves bourbon and whiskey, I would highly recommend Barry's for you just because they have a lot of options. The only place that I really found that has rivaled the menu in terms of bourbons is probably Circa's Legacy Club, which is upstairs, but that's kind of what they're known for. But also, I mean, it's got a good selection. So when I went to Kentucky, I kind of just sort of, keep an eye on, how much whiskey or bourbon is offered at restaurants. They offered a good amount here. So I had a Four Roses whiskey. There are two different ones. There's one that's 18, the one's one that's 23. Maybe I should have got the $23 one, but hey, you only live once. I got the $18 one just because, it all tastes the same. But they actually don't, just because I've had the other one and it tastes better. But my mom ended up having a cocktail that has a watermelon in it. Totally forgot the name of the drink. I'm actually going to go ahead and click through it and see that we got. So, she didn't get a painkiller, not the love, the hibiscus. Let's see. She ended up getting the East Fremont, which is Patron Blanco, cucumber lime cordial, watermelon syrup, and mint, which sounds delicious. Highly recommend it. By the way, if you want to end up doing that, like if you are not somebody who enjoys tequila, especially if it's a light tequila, like if it calls for a Blanco, you can also usually order it with gin, and it tastes similar in terms of the flavoring. Obviously, not exactly the same in terms of the cocktail, but if you do not like the taste of tequila, you can go with gin, and it masks a little bit more with all the other flavors. It'll enhance things like the watermelon, the mint, the cucumber, and you won't really taste the gin at that point. Gin is a great mixing cocktail for any of those of you out there who are trying to expand your cocktail game, and you're like, man, like I really just want to try more cocktails, but I don't like gin. I don't like the way that gin tastes. You've probably been drinking gin by itself or gin in a very basic form. Highly recommend doing gin in cocktails like this that call for cucumber, lime, mint. Gets a lot of those herbal notes when you're drinking any of those cocktails. So really tasty. So they end up getting that. We got our food. We ended up getting sides. The sides, very much to share. We ended up getting the whipped Belgian potatoes. They were very delicious. How they're quite good. And then we ended up getting the George Malouf's cream corn. I don't really like cream corn. That shit was bomb. Loved the cream corn, and we ate it all, which was fantastic. No food was left. We ate it all. A little bit of chicken was left, but it's a very large chicken, a lot of bones. But loved it. Fantastic. We didn't have the very famous s'mores dessert, which my dad really wanted. But we did a champagne toast instead, which was nice. So that was a good day. So that was berries. I was very much like in the camp that I did not like berries. I thought berries was overrated. I was like, this place is so dumb. Why does everybody go here? But honestly, on this particular trip, and we also sat like in a different section that had TVs, which was nice, was great. It was absolutely fantastic. I had a really great time at Barry's, and I thought the food was really delicious, and I liked the vibes. It was very chill. It wasn't as busy. Because one time we sat like more towards the bar, and when you sit like around the bar area at Barry's, I wasn't a fan. I didn't like sitting near the bar area because it's a little bit too tight. Over here, a little bit more chill. Absolutely fantastic. So shout out Barry's, great job. Overall, that was the weekend. The weekend was action packed. Played at Caesars a little bit. I didn't mention that we ended up going to the Water Grill. I don't think I'm a big fan of Water Grill's fish and chips. I just want to say that. That's at Caesar's Palace. But it's really cool vibes. Good for lunch. Sometimes they have specials. But cool place for lunch if you want something that's sort of like fork and knife sort of sit down. We played blackjack at Caesar's, which I ended up playing for a good little while. Won $75 over the course of an hour. Not a lot of money, but it was fun to play blackjack with my pops, so that was cool. So anyways, that was your weekend in review with me. And if you have any questions, I did have somebody reach out that says they like to do a lot of things that I like to do. I haven't done like that episode yet, although I know that you are coming in pretty soon. I'll try to go through that and see if I can make that into an episode. If not, then I'll just respond to you on Instagram. I believe they're coming in September, so it will still be hot then. So anyways, thanks so much for listening. Really appreciate you guys' support. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials, ConcertsConfidential_LV, and of course me on my personal, which is Brian Ortega _26. I think it's actually Brian _Ortega 26. Who knows? Find me, Brian Ortega in Las Vegas. You'll always find me. So thanks again, everybody. Make sure you come out to Las Vegas whenever you can. And if you do see me out in town, make sure you come up and say hello. But remember, keep it confidential.